but just enjoying this for what it is. Bones of salt. Confess your flesh be at their behest. The salt was fresh, you were the pest. All failed in this city, I love it nonetheless. What is the audacity of beheading happiness? Tell me, O Messiah, why was he the pariah? It too came with you, no one remembers it before you. He does not know the bullet entered his brain. He never will. Death comes faster than any soulless complain. What a thrill. This is real darkness. It's not war or death. It has love for a breath. The first death is the emptiness. Great things aren't to come. Are they? What do I think about ChatGPT? Do I think it's good that it exists, or the opposite? Well, I'm not big on the sort of black or white. You know, it's either good or bad. But I can talk about it maybe in a bit. We can talk about ChatGPT, art, generative AI and implications. I do have some thoughts, and I think they just released a new model of ChatGPT, so I'm sure it's even better and more powerful now, which is impressive and amazing and scary and all the things at the same time, right? So yeah. But I can definitely go over it. But I'd say there are good things and there are bad things to generative AI in all spaces, including art. So, this again. Bones of salt. Confess your flesh, be at their behest. The salt was fresh, you were the pest. All failed in the city. Sorry, there's some yard work happening outside. Sort of annoying. All failed in this city. I love it nonetheless. What is the audacity of beheading happiness? Tell me, O Messiah, why was he the pariah? It too came with you. No one remembers it before you. He does not know the bullet entered his brain. He never will. Death comes faster than any soulless complain. What a thrill. This is real darkness. It's not war or death. It has love for a breath. The first death is the emptiness. Great things aren't to come, are they? It's like how the painter reacted to when cameras became a thing. Yeah, in a sense. I think ChatGPT is much more powerful relative to, let's say, the camera to the painting. Mostly because the camera just cannot do the same thing that painting does. It's a different medium, right? And we've seen that sort of hash out. The issue is that ChatGPT is generative, it's imitative, and potentially could write a poem that, you know, is indistinguishable from one created by a person. And that's why people are worried, right? Let's look at this. Bones of Salt. So this is from TheVoidYes, who has sort of given me multiple poems from this similar world as she has described it, right? I think this is one of them. Yes, this was the Road of the Sea, and then there was maybe another one. Yeah, the Road to the Waves, and then now we have the Bones of Salt, right? And I'm gonna sort of be analyzing this one in isolation, so not thinking too much about the previous ones, at least until later, right? I need to sit cross-legged. It's better for my back, and my back is a little bit achy. Thank you for the review about ChatGPT. I use it myself, and in my opinion, it's very interesting, quite helpful, but he still has a lot to learn and think it'll take a dozen or so years before he develops to at least be excellent help. Speaking of the RPGs I mentioned earlier, I've been participated in one live, and overall I really liked RPGs from that moment. Yeah, RPGs are cool. Sometime I want to like stream RPGs, and I think that would be fun. As for ChatGPT, I think it's funny because you use he to talk about ChatGPT, and that's an indication of, you know, some amount of that being like a person. Even if that was an accident or you didn't mean to imply that, that is what linguistically you've done, which is interesting, right? I don't think it will take more than 5 more years for ChatGPT to really be this like turning point in society. It could be even just like 2 years. At what point does a machine that completely copies a human become a human? Oh, y'all are asking big questions. I'm gonna ask that you all put a pin in the ChatGPT conversation so I can do this poem analysis, and we'll come back to it later because it's really interesting and it's probably a really good thing to talk about, especially since we're doing October and it's this time where we're really talking a lot about writing and doing lots of writing, and I think ChatGPT is really big in the discourse, right, around it. So I think it's important to have that conversation on stream and have it a lot, especially as it gets more powerful. But yes, TheVoidYes, back to the poem. And maybe I'll post the ChatGPT conversation on YouTube in case, you know, y'all have to go before then, but I do want to have that discussion. But yeah. Confess your flesh, be at their behest. The salt was fresh, you were the pest. All failed in this city, I love it nonetheless. What is the audacity of beheading happiness? What is the audacity? Tell me, O Messiah, why was he the pariah? It too came with you. No one remembers it before you. He does not know the bullet entered his brain. He never will. Death comes faster than any soulless complain. What a thrill. This is real darkness. It's not war or death. It has love for a breath. The first death is the emptiness. Great things aren't to come, are they? Okay. Interesting. VoidYes, your poems are always so metaphorical and sort of heady that it can be hard to get a first impression of what they ever mean. And of course, we do come to that eventually, but I'm definitely lost, which is good, because if anyone here is new to poetry or new to just reading and literature or whatever, we're going to go through and try to figure out what this poem means, what we think about it, maybe give some critique, how it could do better, what it's trying to do, and all of that, right? Okay, I'm going, but it was nice talking. Glad that there's a difference abroad, and that asexual people are much more accepted in my country. Previously, also was a streamer who was homosexual, and she said that asexuality is a natural thing for people. Yeah. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for the good conversation, Bosky. If you want to come back, follow, and enjoy the rest of your, I guess, evening. I think you maybe mentioned you're from Europe, Poland. So, enjoy. $21:44. Yeah, okay. So it's getting to evening. 9 hours ahead of me, right? Thanks for talking. Bye. Yeah, have a good one. So, confess your flesh, be at their behest. The salt was fresh, you were the pest. So here's the thing. You usually have multiple viewpoints going on in your poems, or multiple characters in a very short time, TheVoidYes, so it's always good to hash out what we think is going on, right? So we have like you, and then I, and then he. There is the Messiah, which I think is you. At which point, you, we know, are the past. He, bullet, dead. Never will, death comes faster. And then we have the idea of darkness, which is often a thing in your poem. And of course, the ever-present question that TheVoidYes asks of someone and to someone. I really like this theme of the questions at the end. I think this is a really cool thing you do. And it's cool to see that you have this sort of running theme and style throughout your poems. And I'm not exactly sure how to describe it. Maybe I can do that. I know you were asking in a previous stream, you said, what is my style? Right? I think you asked that in chat. Or I wonder, what is my style? And maybe we'll talk about your style and what we think, because I've seen 3 of your poems. I know your style now. Perhaps that's something we can do. Right. So, confess your flesh, be at there. So again, you are supposed to confess. And then he is also the pariah. And it's always good. Like, I know the word pariah is someone who's sort of like this sacrifice-ish thing. An outcast. Yeah. So, it's always good to just look up words to make sure we have the right meanings. No shame in that, especially if English is a second language. And let's see. Confess your flesh, be at their behest. We also have they. Interestingly, we have they, but I'm not sure how much more it's mentioned. The salt was fresh, you were the pest. So to me this is saying, like, salting a pest, that would be like a leech or something, or like a snail, but snails are good. But if you salt any of those wet, slimy insects, it kills them, or at least causes them a lot of pain, because it dries them out. So that could potentially be an idea if we're talking about salt and pests, right? Just making connections. All failed in this city. I love it nonetheless. What is the audacity of beheading happiness? So, audacity meaning like boldness. If you are audacious, you are confident and bold and all of that. Also in sort of a very outward presenting way, I suppose. Of beheading happiness. So perhaps there is a claim then that there is audacity, that there is some amount of impressive boldness in beheading happiness, which would be sort of sadness. Whereas you ask, or the author, not the author, the subject, the point of view is asking, what is the audacity? Explain that to me. Beheading, talk about the bullet to the head, which is maybe in a sense a beheading, which would be referring to he, the pariah, right? If that was the connection. Tell me, O Messiah, why was he the pariah? It too came with you. No one remembers it before you. So there is something that he had, the pariah, that also came with you, the Messiah, right? Saying in a sense that they are connected in some way. These two individuals, right? Oops. No one remembers it before you, as if to say, they were the first, and then the second, being the pariah, was made a pariah for that, which is interesting. He does not know the bullet entered his brain, he never will. Death comes faster than any soulless complain, what a thrill. For performance, I probably should be putting more of a pause there. It's for emphasis. He does not know the bullet enters his brain, he never will. Just a functional sort of 2 lines saying that he's dead. Death comes faster than any soulless complain. Interesting. What a thrill. Sort of unsure, I underline that in blue as to what a thrill is saying or referring to. This is real darkness. Tends to be that if it's not explained elsewhere, this tends to be referring to that which we have said before. Right? If it's like this is real darkness and then described a scene, then it would be describing what's after it. But in this case, more descriptions. So this is probably all talking about the start of the poem. It's not war or death, it has love for a breath. The first death is the emptiness. My back is really achy. Hold on, y'all. Let me get a back bend in here. Move it. I'm trying to keep the hat on sort of a weird thing that I have to do. Everything is sore. I've been sitting a lot. I've been streaming a lot. Jeez. Touch the floor. Stretch the back. Crunchy shoulders. Okay. Oh. A good stretch. Actual moment of The Exorcist. Oh. I am a little horrifying. Let me stretch my back here. Okay, it's a little better, but everything still kind of hurts. Damn, oof. The Exorcist comment's hilarious. I have to say. My body can do some weird things like that. And I should stretch my neck too. So a really good thing is just to like let it lay to the side. And then try your best to relax this so you're not pulling down. And then this side is just going to stretch and come further down on its own. You don't need to force it. And then doing that in all directions. Definitely might realize that your neck doesn't go very far, and that's okay. Some people will say to like go to a chiropractor for that. That's nonsense. You can just do light stretching every day and you'll stretch out. You can see when my head goes this way, it doesn't go as far. See, this way, it's like 45. This way, it's more like a 30-degree angle from center. And that's probably why I feel a little kind of imbalanced and sore. Snap your bones yourself. No, just very gently stretch them out. Oh, my hat. I need my hat. I don't really like showing my hair. Save my hair for marriage. I'm not exactly unserious about that statement. Oh, that was a good crack. You can crack your bones yourself. You just gotta know what you're doing. Okay. Back to it. After the brief stretching break. So, this is real darkness. It's not war or death. It has love for a breath. The first death is the emptiness. Which kind of tells me maybe that emptiness, but with love for a breath, maybe is talking about the loss of love, right? I do the cracking your neck by tilting once to each side. Oh yeah. And then like knock someone out. Yeah, I don't like that one just because I try to be as slow and nice, because cracking your neck, you can just make it feel worse if you're very aggressive. Also, you need this. So I take this hand And I'm grabbing my foot on this side. I'm also sitting in lotus. And then, which is like where your feet are in a pretzel. And now both my arms are kind of backwards on opposite sides. And that's really nice for the shoulders. Pulls them like all the way back. And that's stretching your neck is like really good from this position. You notice it kind of tilts less far. It's a very different feeling. Whoop. Okay. I really need someone to like stand on my back. If you've never had someone stand on your back, y'all, find someone who's like not too heavy, like in like the, 150 to 200 pound range. You can go less. And have them like ease their way into standing on your back when you are face down on the floor. That is something truly amazing. Let's I'm just thinking about it now. Yeah, it's great. So, to me, this might be saying, like, a loss of faith, which maybe connects to our, TheVoidYes classic sarcastic line at the end. Great things are to come, aren't they? Well, like, no. If we lost faith, and we talked about, messiahs sort of being false, labeling others as pariahs, we talked about killing those who kind of don't align, and death being soulless in this sense, right? So maybe that's what we're talking about. And that's a similar theme in your poems, not to like inject that, but also salt. Salt is, of course, sort of the opposite or lacking, red, water, right? There isn't water if there is salt, right? And again, sucking life out of the past. And we talk about water a lot in these poems of yours. I am going to go back now to, what was it? They're not labeled right for yours. It's like literally untitled. No, that's N. A Road to the Waves. We talk about water as sort of, both commonly in religion as salvation. Also, there is danger and whatnot. But I think we have seen water in some sense in these poems as a good thing, also a bad thing. Same with the salt, which of course is a wonderful little contradiction. We talk about salt as if we're going biblical, the salt of the earth, or just as the most important spice that we have, or something that preserves and protects our food, while also it dries things out and kills things. And you imagine something like salt flats, which are desolate, salt water we can't drink. And then water has similar things. Water in great amount in the ocean can kill us. That's salt water, interestingly enough. But also lakes, also rivers, but water is life. So to say that your bones, the very deepest core part of you, right, bones are very core to your being, are salt, is to sort of say that maybe there's not much good in you, you being you, you being the Messiah. So a sort of lie, critiquing those who are false messiahs who will tell you they bring salvation and happiness and whatever. I want to go back to this. All failed in this city, I love it nonetheless. What is the audacity of beheading happiness? Tell me, O Messiah, right? As to say that with confidence, with audacity, perhaps, someone labeling themselves as a Messiah can do this We see people get guided into cults, blindly, it seems, because of the audacity and the idea of someone being a messiah. And this poem, as one should, calls those things into question. Confess your flesh, be at their behest. So this is the first line talking to you, again, the Messiah. And this is why we broke it down at the start. Now, it's easy to label that. There is probably just a very, general, the populace or whatever. But be at their behest is to say, to be at the behest of something is to be in control, or to be controlled by it. So be controlled by the people. Perhaps to say to give up your control over them. Calling almost for this false person to stop. The salt was fresh, you were of the past. And I'd imagine, tell me, O Messiah, why was he the pariah? It too came with you, it being this idea of probably religious fervor or worship, and the label perhaps of a cult maybe. He did that too when he was probably starting, sort of, entering people's lives. But now he's labeling others with that to protect himself, And there's sort of a literal story here, right? Somebody rising to power, and then some new separate person coming in to challenge and call into question them, and taking a path, a solution of violence, right, toward that person, and making a martyr of them, right? So this is real darkness. It's not war or death, it has love for a breath. Someone can say that they speak with love and not do so honestly. The first death is the emptiness of that love, the emptiness of true belief, right? And this could also be an internal dynamic, a metaphor in its entirety. And you have to say, well, usually we're not talking about just the actual scene we have described. There's usually more to a poem, and that's where things can get tricky. But if we talk about a person and their feelings on this, then we can talk about them coming to a sort of belief system about the world. And then their beliefs might be challenged, right? And then they have two options from here. We can change, or we can deny the challenge and go back to our original beliefs. And if we change, then we get a wonderful new belief, which maybe has some of this and some of this, or it's entirely new, however you want to see that. And in this case, our Messiah, our old beliefs, did not allow change and new things in our life, and cut all of this off, leaving just this cynical response. Great things aren't to come, are they? there is no hope, there is no change. Because usually, when there's no possibility for change... hi, Stylish Fail. What are we doing? We are analyzing TheVoidYes' poem Bones of Salt. So if there's no possible change in your life, things look pretty hopeless, pretty empty, in like a sad sense. And you know, there are examples of that. People describe depression like this. People describe financial trouble like this, which makes this an excellent sort of metaphor, which I'm sure lots of people can inject their own beliefs into. Addiction, right, etc. It is not war or death. It's something that is love for a breath. And so, that's my sort of analytic thoughts on this. Now I'm going to go ahead and try to give you some advice. And then we're going to look at what your style is, because we did talk about that. Confess your flesh, be at their behest. The salt was fresh, you were the pest. All failed in this city, I love it nonetheless. So if we're using like the self metaphor, this could be talking about having a deep sense of self-love and seeing one's life as sort of in shambles with these conflicting forces and being okay with it. That's good. Or having the love for this place to fight the Messiah that is coming in. So I do like that. What is the audacity of beheading happiness? Capital H is cool, right? We're referring to a person beheading the pariah. I just wonder, maybe, you do this just once. Maybe if the pariah is happiness, then the Messiah is something. Another capital letter word, right? As to bring that connection through, it can be useful to have those little touches that reinforce those connections. I do think it's interesting then that you like don't capitalize here. Like this is your one instance of capitalizing a word out of nowhere, I think, basically, which is interesting, and it makes it's telling that this poem is about happiness, and maybe in that case it is about this belief system of depression that we're stuck in. So in that sense, if it's the only one thing, it's a useful way to communicate its importance. In that sense, you might also capitalize emptiness. Very similar. Also, happiness, emptiness, even darkness. And then you have a theme going, ESS, and that's just kind of cool, right? But I do think those are probably on par with the happiness if these are internal dynamics of the person. And tell me, O Messiah, why was he the pariah? It too came with you. No one remembers it before you. I do think that it could be, maybe it's referring to happiness and I just missed that happiness came, it was beheaded, you also brought it, but now you're denying others happiness and that faith, and that it has now been twisted into a sense of not happiness. But I do think, like, just verbally, this line is a little, I don't know, it too came with you, no one remembers it before you. I just maybe don't like it and it it's definitely challenging the reader to say, okay, what is it? And drawing attention. You could just say it, you know. Say it as in say what it is referring to. Or you can leave it as such. He does not know the bullet entered his brain. He never will. Death comes faster than any soulless complaint. What a thrill. So the idea of thrill in death probably connects to like the idea of like the depression, maybe, if that's what we're going with as our theme or big idea. But this line also just felt a little out of place. You know, thrill is this word with a lot of movement, a lot of energy, and otherwise we have a lot of these like much more abstract, heady words. Something being a thrill feels very grounded. You know, something being a thrill maybe just feels a little disjointed, especially when the previous line, death comes faster than any soulless complaint. And then just like, what a thrill. Which is poignant, it's powerful in the same way that he never will. It strikes you. I just think maybe it's striking in a way that isn't conducive to like the linguistic sort of ideas that you've already established. So you could say, you know, you could call it enticing or addicting or things like that. You could call it, you could say it captures, just, but thrill is also a very powerful word and sticks out. And I think if you like it and you have strong intentions for thrill, definitely keep it. I'm just pointing out that it sticks out a lot, and if that's what you want, then that is going to be just fine. If I turn down the brightness, you'll see the colors better. That's interesting. So, also death comes faster than any soulless complaint. Maybe I'm just bad, but this feels very not interpretable. Like, he was dead before he could complain, but soullessly is like death, but also the soulless one is not really the pariah because he has happiness, which is, you know, not soulless. This line just, I'm not sure who and what it's referring to, and I don't think reading more into it is gonna help me there. Because I've been thinking about it the whole time as I keep going through the poem. Like, I don't know. And maybe this is referring to the soulless complaints of the subject, the voice that is talking. They're sort of questioning the audacity and whatnot, which in that case does make sense. They have already found themselves soulless and part of the darkness, and are maybe saying with this lack of faith that my complaints or desires they won't be heard. My complaints won't be heard. And that's a very hopeless thing. So I guess maybe I have an interpretation of that now. It's just a little tricky to come to. And I know you do this a lot. You have very wordy poems. You have very challenging poems. And if I had to talk about your style, part of your style is that you challenge your reader a lot. You hold your cards close and are not trying to give easy answers. Very heady, very philosophical, and very difficult words, interesting phrasing that catches one off guard, sort of surprising, you know, questions or phrases out of nowhere, a sense of irony in a lot of your poems, or sarcasm. So that's really good, I will say. This is real darkness, it's not war or death. I think we've talked about this stanza enough. Great things aren't to come, are they? So yeah, this poem lacks hope. Or are they? I don't know. I get a hopeless vibe from this, especially with happiness being dead. I love your sort of characters though, like happiness being a name of a person is super cool. And then I don't know if you really do that here. I mean, you have these ideas like a sire and a sword and lords. And you talk about this being a cohesive sort of world in which these poems take place. And it's a world I want to know so much more about because there are so many different things going on. And we have cities and rain and dreariness, but also messiahs and hope, but we put bullets through their heads in this world. It's interesting, right? And maybe that's just Earth. But I would say that's the extent of my feedback, is toying with some of this this capitalization. To be fair, you also capitalize the start of every line. I think even after commas, although that is I. So maybe you don't. Oh no, they all end in periods except for one, which is a interesting touch, right? The only like couplet that we have is this. Everything else is like period, end, which makes this a really interesting stanza. The amount of like unique aspects to the poem that this specific part has, right? Which maybe continues to draw the eye to this and says this is important, right? All failed in this city, I love it nonetheless. All has failed in me, all has failed in my world, I love it, is a little bit of hope shining through this poem. But we followed up by that happiness has been killed. So like there's a lot to think about. There's a lot going on. But I know you wanted to know, TheVoidYes. You did ask me. I wonder what my style is. And I've read 3 of your poems, and if it's all like this, which maybe these are the only things you've written. So like I said, your style, what a fun city, isn't it? Maybe I already read that. Sometimes I read chat messages twice and just don't realize that I have like read them out loud twice. Yeah, super fun city. But a city I want to know more about. It's a really enticing, interesting city. So what is your style? You are challenging your reader. You use these big words, use this sort of headiness. Heady, philosophical, steeped in so much metaphor. We talk about messiahs and salt and water, so we could say some amount of religion / I already said philosophy, so I get some definitely like religious vibes in your style, and an amount of sarcasm and what's the word? Sardonic? Dark humor? What does sardonic mean? I think it's very pointed too. Grimly mocking or cynical. Yeah. Cynical, sardonic, pointed. Your poems feel sharp and angular, if I was to use a metaphor myself. So to answer that question, that's roughly what I think of TheVoidYes. Do you have any more questions or things you want me to look into more? You can feel free to explain if you would like. Not my preference to do myself, but some people enjoy it. Or you can just tell me, you know, oh, you were interpreted it just as I wrote it. But I don't even need to know that, and don't want to. But that's your choice. You're in chat. I'm your captive streamer. So I'll give you a second to respond in that regard, but that is Bones of Salt. I guess I'll read it again while I wait if you have any comments, because I know sometimes y'all type a lot in chat, which I love. Bones of Salt. Confess your flesh at their behest. The salt was fresh, you were the pest. All failed in this city, I love it nonetheless. What is the audacity of beheading happiness? Tell me, O Messiah, why was he the pariah? It too came with you, no one remembers it before you. He does not know. The bullet entered his brain. He never will. Death comes faster than any soulless complain. What a thrill! This is real darkness. It's not war or death. It has love for a breath. The first death is the emptiness. Great things aren't to come. Are they? Bones of Salt by TheVoidYes. Main setting is just a city by the sea, very salty, somewhat run down and in decadence. Far gone glory, yet people still live there. Yeah, and I definitely get that. It comes through. I think it's a setting that I would want to hear. I would want a short story in your setting. I would want, you know, a sort of graphic zine that shows me images of this dark, haunting place alongside your poetry. I really think like what you've been creating in this world, in these set of 3 poems that you've shown me, is a beautiful, beautiful and very consistent thing. And I guess maybe my biggest like feedback on this poem, which I do say a lot, is to do more and take this in more directions and experiment with this little thing you're building. You know, you could run a role-playing game in this world, and that would be freaking incredible. Just that there's like so much emotion in it, so much imagery, and you do it so well that it would be sad to see it, you know, not continue to grow and evolve. And even if that's just through poetry, then by all means keep doing it through poetry and keep sending it to me, because it's really, really good, right? So to that end, thank you, TheVoidYes. I mostly just write with inspiration and don't force it. Well, the inspiration's coming from somewhere good. Thank you, TheVoidYes. It always means a lot, even though I say it every time to everyone, to have you all sending things to me. You're sharing so much beautiful art. I feel like I am encouraging and pushing other people to create art and poetry, and that is cool. And I want that to keep happening.